Now, back to Sunrise on News Radio 880 KCMX.
Shout, shout, I'm talking to you, so come on. Shout!
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. 17 minutes after the hour, it's the Sunrise Show on News Radio 880 KCMX. Craig Fronikin is your humble host, and want to bring on to the program local constitutional scholar Joel Marks. He's an adjunct professor at SOU as well, and he's hosting a incredible constitutional class on Thursday, starting tomorrow night, called America at the Crossroads, and it's I don't know, 7 or 8 Thursday nights, and I tell you what, it's wonderful to go to, and you need to bring kids and high schoolers, and I tell you what, talk about love of country over love of party. This is it. And Joel, thanks so much for being on the program this morning.
Thanks, Craig.
You know,
thanks very much.
Well, yeah, you do such a great job with this constitutional history and how America could not have been where it was. I mean, it was a divine providence, the fact that George Washington existed at exactly the right moment. And one of your poignant statements is, what leader in the history of the world has walked away from power in a humble way like George Washington?
Well, nobody.
Exactly.
Cincinnatus, the Roman, went back to his farm, and they wanted him to come back. But nobody really in history did what George Washington did, and nobody will. We've had this time and time again happen in different countries. People don't walk away from power. They embrace power, and then when you meld power and money like we've done today, then you've got human nature. It's very difficult to control that. And Washington, when he fought in the Revolutionary War for 8 years, he only went back to Mount Vernon for 1 week of the 8 years, and what he got for that war, by the way, was just his expenses. That's all he got, his expenses, and he felt that the Continental Congress should pay him for his expenses, and later on they did, and it wasn't very much. But he's the epitome of history. He wasn't a philosopher. We were very fortunate not only to have Washington at the right time, but we had Madison and Jefferson. Yeah, after you win the war, you have to put something in place, and a lot of times countries can't do that. You had the Bolshevik Revolution, and then what did they put in place? You know, you have to be able to have somebody there, and we were very it is divine providence, as you said, and we're very fortunate to have put that whole program together.
It's amazing, Joel, because George Washington was quoted. He said, "The power under the Constitution will always be in the people. It is entrusted for certain defined purposes and for a certain limited period to representatives of their own choosing, and whenever it is executed contrary to their interest or not agreeable to their wishes, their servants can and undoubtedly will be recalled." And it's it's issue of empowering Americans, that if politicians are not doing the bidding of the people and protecting them, they shall and will be recalled. And
that's right. But in those days, they knew what they wanted the politicians to do, and they went back to their farms. Today, you've got a lot of politicians not doing very well, but people have gotten pretty soft, and some people agree with the bad things that are being done. It's a very different culture here.
No, it couldn't. And, before this annotated issue, and you were involved with this school board situation, and, because what's happened is you have to go back up the line. The school board voted on this textbook, and the fact that the Second Amendment, and you saw multiple atrocities related to the history. If we're going to teach our children the real story of America, why are we annotating it? And I asked you right before we came on, I said, why are they even in business with this annotating and these documents. I mean, this Jack Racco, the annotated U.S. Constitution and Declaration of Independence, and you came out right away and said there's a lot of money in it.
Yeah, the book publishers came from Chicago, I believe. They came all the way out here to seal the deal, and they talked, and the board members would testify the night I went, which was a couple of nights ago. They testified how they didn't testify. The board members didn't say how they had read the book. They said how they had talked to the publishers and how they talked to the staff. There's $240,000 involved here. The books cost they cost, I think, retail $124, but they're selling it to the schools for $75, I believe.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of money involved in this, and the book itself is a beautiful-looking book. It's bound beautifully. The pages, it's 1,108 pages with 150 pages of index. Now, included in that 1,108 is an appendix. They have different appendix, and I've counted the written constitution with the editorialization of it. You can't, and it's small print, and you have to think about what they're saying too. You can't just run through this. I was told by some people in the administration that I was the only one from the public who had actually tried to read this thing. I came into the building twice, and then I went online, which, by the way, you have to be a VIP to get in there, I guess,
right,
because
right.
The only way I could get in online was to call the administration and get the code.
Yeah,
otherwise you can't get in.
When you go onto their website, the Cengage or whatever, you have to be like an educator, and you have to have a username and password, and then you can read it online.
Yes.
But if you don't have that, then exactly right. Joel, we've got a break coming up. I've got Joel Marks with us, and his class coming up tomorrow is America at a Crossroads, and I encourage everyone to go that you can get time away. It is a brilliant time, and Joel, it's great to have you do that.
Thank you.
Especially with at the Medford Library. It's free of charge, and you would not believe some of the things that come out in these classes, and it's an open dialogue and things. But we've got to get to a break. When we come back, I want to talk more about this annotated issue and this Second Amendment. Turns out this is not a new thing. These scholars, these professors, these history professors have been doing this, and wait till you see what is going on related to the Second Amendment. They've done this before. This is not anything new. So let's come right back. It's the Sunrise Show on News Radio 880 KCMX. The Bloomberg Market Update is next.
Now, back to Sunrise on News Radio 880 KCMX.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us this morning. Craig Fronikin is your host on the Sunrise Show on News Radio 880 KCMX. Continuing with Joel Marks, a local constitutional scholar and adjunct professor at SOU, and he's got a class coming up, America at a Crossroad, coming up on Thursday nights. It is free to the general public down at the Medford Library, 6:30 to 8:30. That's 7 weeks. And the Making of America is lesson plan number 1. That starts up tomorrow. And we talked about George Washington and divine providence with the Founding Fathers, and that they were all in the exact places. But Joel, we're also talking with education and this textbook issue with the school board just on Monday, and this meeting, and talk about the bias of American history in our textbooks, and how can children learn if there's a bias already thrown into the mix?
Well, first of all, the teachers, many of the teachers embrace the bias. And so what you've got is you've got a false premise to start, and then you're increasing that premise by teachers not necessarily agreeing with really the success formula of what caused the country to start in the first place. They have to know what that success formula is and how it really took place. And if they don't, then everything's up for grabs, and the students will not get it. And obviously, in 2015, how much history have we thrown away?
they're not getting the whole story. And I've talked to people, and here's the thing: they're honeycoating this American history. They're taking out the atrocities against the American Indians. They're taking out they're bashing the Constitution and the founding fathers because they didn't fix slavery right away. And like you said, Joel, in your class, you said, hey, they couldn't get slavery out of the mix because it was too big in the economy, and they fixed it later. And that you said if they didn't, it wouldn't have had the 13 colonies. They wouldn't have had the signing.
Well, the people that say this, like, let's say Oprah Winfrey, you're on the Oprah Winfrey show. Of course, she wouldn't have been at the Constitutional Convention, but let's say she had with her ideas. Let's say she was a man and she was there. What would she have done? Voted against the Constitution? So you would have, Madison was against slavery too. A lot of the others, Washington was too. They were against it. They had slaves, but they wanted to abolish it. But what would these other people that are talking about how bad the Founding Fathers are with slavery, would they have voted for the Constitution? Because if they wouldn't have, there wouldn't have been a union, and if they would have, you would have had to extend slavery for 20 years. That was the compromise. And that was the three things they compromised on. It's absurd and preposterous to, in a soundbite, castigate the Founding Fathers when most of us would have done the very same thing that they did.
And what is this book publisher calling them elite conservatives?
Well, they throw that in. They take a guy named Charles Beard, who was kind of he wrote a book in 1913, and he really castigated the founders as economic. Just their whole presentation was an economic interest. And in the book, they bring this elite conservative stuff out, which they didn't need to do that. Why do that? The Founding Fathers, first of all, the only elite thing about the Founding Fathers was the documents that they came up with. That was amazing. The conservative part, there is no such term. That's a political term.
Oh, it's crazy.
That's not a historical term. That's political. And all throughout this American pageant, you've got this. As a matter of fact, on one section, it talks about, you really have to delve into this book. I spent a lot of time on this book, and I could only skim the surface of it, and I spent 7 to 8 hours on it. And so it takes a lot of time. But in one part, it talks about the Taft-Hartley Act. Now, the Taft-Hartley Act, of course, is the Right to Work Act, and it's a great act passed in 1947. President Truman vetoed it, and the Congress overrode his veto by 2/3. So, but in the book, in the American pageant, it says, and they quoted a labor leader. That's all they did. They didn't get both sides of the story, of course. They said, the labor leader said that this was a slave labor act. That's preposterous.
Oh, my gosh.
It's not a slave labor act. It's a right to work act. And what it did was it said, well, look, you don't have to be forced to join a union to be able to work. It was a very solid thing.
Well,
and we had that. And this book twisted the whole thing around.
Well, it's clearly political bias and this issue of annotated Constitution. I tell you, Joel, I was, and I just talked to Oregon State Representative Sal Esquivel, and when I read him this article and read him what it does in the Constitution of the Second Amendment, and it brackets within the Second Amendment the right of the people to keep and bear arms, bracket, i.e. for military purposes, unbracket, shall not be infringed. He goes, that's not in there. I'm offended by that. I mean, he just, and we were, it is wrong to have...
Well, Sal understands the Constitution, and he knows the Second Amendment backwards and forwards.
Right.
And for them to... But they editorialized a lot of that stuff in the Constitution. And the thing on the military, actually... Madison said that the Second Amendment was to really protect us against our own government.
Yeah, exactly right. So the issue is, I couldn't believe that. I said, why would they, these words are fought and died for. Men and women have fought and died over these words and for the American flag and these Constitution and the documents that we have. How dare we even tread on that by annotating any of this stuff? Joel, but it's interesting that the political bias comes out with our kids. I mean, Jack Rakoff, even in his Article 4, Section 4, and how his impeachment of Bill Clinton, he said the impeachment of Bill Clinton in 1999 for private acts unrelated to his presidential duties was arguably an act of partisan spite.
Well, look, impeachment, we've talked about this, Craig, but impeachment is a political process. You've got... the only president that almost got fully impeached was Andrew Johnson. And in Profiles in Courage, it talks about Senator Ross was the one vote that stopped the impeachment. He felt it was an act of courage, Kennedy did. And it probably was because it set the precedent that how difficult it is to really impeach a president. Bill Clinton should have been, he was impeached by the House. The impeachment wasn't upheld by the Senate.
Right.
But you have to have in the Senate 67 votes, and that's a high bar.
Oh boy!
And
yeah.
so they didn't get him impeached, but he did commit high crimes and misdemeanors, and he even had his law license revoked for 5 years. He lied to the Judge Wright in Arkansas. He lied about Lewinsky. He obstructed justice.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question. And so that annotated, that editorial that you're talking about in the Constitution is a political statement. It is not historical.
Well, isn't that amazing that it's an American history book, but yet they're throwing their political piece in there, and these scholars from Stanford University, they think that they've paid the price. They equate themselves. It's amazing.
Well, the other one is from Harvard, the woman. You've got the Stanford person and the Harvard person, and they have a bias on American history, and they may not even like what the founders did, because through this book you can see that. Some people online have said even worse things about this book than I have said. But you can't just read other people's statements. People have to read it for themselves, and then they'll make their decision, because I have 4 pages of notes that I took from it. And when I testified to the school board, you only have 3 minutes. I took about 5. And then, Larry Nicholson made a courageous vote against this.
Yeah.
And Wallen, she has been a rock of Gibraltar, but her whole thing has been the annotation of the Second Amendment.
Oh my gosh! Yeah,
I didn't hear anybody say anything about any of these other things. And one of the board members that night, Yesquin, who was, I got a hint that she was going to call me. I wouldn't leave my email because I wanted her to talk to me. Her and Trish Prendergrass were going to call, and they didn't. Yesquin that night said that she didn't understand everything that I said in my testimony, but be that as it may, she has a law there, or she went to law school, and she feels, and she gave a whole political statement, had nothing to do with the book. She hadn't read it.
Yeah,
And she had talked to the publishers, she talked to the staff members, but the staff members and the publishers want the book there.
What are our kids being taught? I just can't believe it. Joel, we're out of time, but it's so great to have you. And ladies and gentlemen, Joel Marks, he's going to be on tomorrow night, the first of 7 weeks, America at a Crossroads at the Medford Library from 6:30 to 8:30. I encourage you to get down and check it out. You can go to one or all of the classes. It's fascinating. You can definitely see a love of country there that Joel Marks, puts together. And Joel, thank you so much for doing that, and thank you for stepping out. And the classes are excellent. Making of America, capitalism, socialism, principles and philosophies of the founders. Washington Creates America, the fathers of the Constitution. It is fascinating, and everybody should get a chance to go down and check that out. Joel, thank you so much.
Thank you, Craig, very much.
All right. Take care. We'll be back. We got to get to a break. The Sunrise Show, more on it coming up. Whew. And as we finish up, there's so much going on. We'll take your calls as well, 541-772-8255. Back after this quick break. You can find us on the website as well, KCMXAM.com, and all our links are there. The Sunrise on KCMX Facebook page, posting throughout the day. And then you can email me, Craig@RadioMedford.com. We'll be back with more to come after this.